I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we observe our moment of silence, I'd like for all of us to keep John Bradford, who was one of our past legislators, in your thoughts and prayers during a very difficult time in his and his wife Donna's life.
Yes, ma'am.
Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call, beginning with myself. I am here. Doug Smith.
Here.
Mike Stephen.
Mr. Stephen here.
Commissioner Colson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
We are all present and accounted for. Commissioner Stephen is on remote call. All right. There is no agenda public comment, so we will move to administrative business. Mark, do you have anything in administrative business? Doug?
I'm sure I got one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
On Monday, I attended at the Heritage Center where Representative Pat Proctor, Representative Dave Beeler, and Representative Tim Johnson spoke. And Representative Proctor held up the newspaper like I'm doing right now and said, county administrator to work on flat mill levy for 2024. And his comment was, if the county's mill levy stays flat, your property tax automatically goes up 14%, everybody's. Now, how can that be? I thought I knew a little bit about budgets, but could somebody explain this to me?
Well, Commissioners, I think that, first of all, that statement's not true. It couldn't possibly be true. But I think it's probably because somebody doesn't understand how the taxation system works. So overall, the valuation for Leavenworth County is up about 13.6%. It will be adjusted slightly after all the properties that come off the taxes and back on. So it'll end up a little less than that more than likely. But for it to be up overall 13.6%, that means somebody's values went down, so their taxes will actually go down on a flat mill levy, and some people's went up more than 13.6%. That's the way the taxation system works. That's how you get to that average. The value, we've discussed a lot about how valuation occurs, and that right now the system doesn't work very favorably for people who lived in their houses for a long time because of the increase that people are paying for homes in Leavenworth County. But a good example might be that someone's house might go up 20% this year because comparable sales went up 20% around them. But somebody else's home may have dropped in tax value but down. Maybe it's only up 10%, maybe it's actually down. But overall, it was 13.6%. I did have some information I was going to go over at the end under discussion items. I can kind of touch on that now, I guess. As I've been working on the budget this last week, as the board directed me last Wednesday to do, I just wanted to point out that you all sat through the budget presentations. Everybody came in and made a very strong case for why their budget needed to be what it did. And without exception, there's justification for what they asked for. However, one of the things that I will say that you all directed me to shoot for a flat mill levy, because I think I made the comment that you did not want to increase the mill levy, not that you did. That requires about $6.7 million in adjustment from what was presented. So the presented budgets last week compared versus what to get to a flat mill levy, it require about $6.7 million in adjustments, which is what I've been working on the last week. So what does that mean, and how do we get there? Well, just looking at the funds that are supported by tax, by property tax, all of them are supported by taxes, obviously, but by property tax. Overall, the increase in expenditures from 2023 to 2024, right now, and I'm not to the flat mill levy yet, but to get there, we'll be up about 7.6% in expenditures. So valuation's up 13.6. But even with a flat mill levy, expenditures will only be up 7.6%. And this is what I try to talk about each year, and that is ad valorem taxes are not our only revenue. And a lot of our revenues do not increase. They stay flat from year to year, and some of them are down. And during the Register of Deeds budget presentation, you heard that last year the revenue for that department was a little over $1 million. This year she's forecasting it right at $5 million or $500,000. I think she's probably pretty close with that. And next year it might be less. Why is that? Well, all the refinancing. With inflation and the interest rates going up, over double, people aren't refinancing, so they're not recording all those deeds. That means that our registration fees are down.
Yep.
So that's $500,000 this year and $500,000 next year. That's a mill. That's $1 million. So that's when people say, well, your taxes are going up. Your property taxes are going up if your valuation went up and we have a flat mill. That's absolutely a true statement. Is it going up 14% across the board? No way, that's not possible. But they would go up if we hold a flat mill levy and your valuation went up too. But not at 13.5% because our expenditures went up, but because that's overall what it takes to run the government. And 7.6% is probably pretty close to what inflation is across the board. And you've all heard the expenditures that we have going on with bridges and roads and so on. They're up a lot more than 7% or 8%. The bridges are up 25 to 30% in 6 months. So the overall ad valorem tax revenue and non-ad valorem tax revenue, like I said, it's going up because expenditures are going up, but it's not going up 14%. And I hope to, by next week, be able to tell you that I've gotten through the budget and gotten to a flat mill levy.
Doug, can I ask one question on this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mark, what was that number we're trying to get to a flat mill levy? We will have to take out, what, $6 million?
Adjustments from what was presented last week to this week, $6.8 million.
So $6.8 million, the county is trying to lower those expenditures. $6.8 million, folks. That is a lot of money for this county. The other thing that I've harped on before is when we keep getting information that's people don't do their homework and it's just thrown out there, it makes everybody else's job is hard. We've asked for individuals, or individual in particular, to come up here and sit down with the county administrator. Why won't you do it and compare your numbers? Sit down and let's talk about it and let's see exactly where you're coming from so we can explain it. But when you want to just throw out things and just everybody catch it because it sounds good, it makes a good photo op, you're not serving the people of this county.
No. And the county's portion of the budget or their tax bill is not the largest. It's the school district.
That's exactly right.
So to say the county is going to raise it 14%, over 14%, it's totally wrong.
And rumor has it the state isn't revenue neutral.
Well, they don't have to be revenue neutral.
It's a fact. And we are not taunting that we have
I let him
surplus
into
of
that one,
money.
Jeff.
So,
I know, Doug.
yeah.
I let you into that. I'm going to hear a response.
Well, I'm just saying, I had to sit through it, and I mean, we could have talked about this all day. But,
Right.
it probably wouldn't have done any good.
No, the state's budget has gone up far more than any of the local municipalities or counties' budget.
And bragging about the stockpile of money they have.
Yeah.
And pushing it off to the cities and the counties.
And
Their bills.
illegally holding our local ad valorem relief funds that could help adjust the mill every
Absolutely.
year.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, that would almost cover
Yeah.
everything that Mark's got to cut out of there. About $4 million would have been we'd have been like just only cutting a couple million, probably.
And only thing I can say,
Ad valorem money back.
only thing I can say last of this, Topeka, we're not going away. The counties are waking up to what's been happening for 20 years. The cities are. There's a big push coming the next year to make sure everybody's held accountable that won't return these funds to all the counties in Kansas and all the cities.
And there's a state statute that backs us on it.
That's exactly right.
I think you're right.
Right.
I think you hit it right on the head, Commissioner Smith. The people are getting smarter. They're figuring it out. And they figured out, you keep yelling at the wrong people and see if it gets fixed. And they're figuring out they've been yelling at the wrong people. and they're starting to figure this out now, and I think that's what's going on.
And back to the appraisals, when they're talking about the high appraisals. The legislature is the only one that can change that.
Yeah, and
Not the
people
county.
are
That's
starting to figure this
I
out.
think that's true.
But
That's
the
true.
state doesn't want to fix it.
And I think,
And,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Commissioner Smith made a really strong point that I didn't, and that is, we're somewhere around 25 to 30% of your tax bill. We're not the majority.
That's right.
So even if you want to say that your valuation went up 14%, that's not all on us. I mean, we're at 25 to 30% of your tax bill. So the other taxing entities also have an impact. Like last year, the township that I live in, they increased the mill levy for the fire district. Not surprisingly, I mean, I understand that their cost of doing business goes up too, but they increased their mill levy. So their share of my taxes went up more than the counties or the cities because they held a flat mill levy. And in the same time frame, I'm pretty sure my income tax that the state collects didn't go down. I'm pretty sure that the sales tax that I pay every time I go buy something that goes to the state didn't go down. It went up. What I'm spending because of inflation went up. So the taxes they collect are going up, and that's where they get their $2 billion in surplus that they brag about, and at the same time don't lower my taxes. And I think it's like a shell game. They push it off that somehow it's the local government's fault, but they have control over more of. And I pay a lot more in income tax and sales tax than I do in property tax, by the way.
Yeah, me too. Jeff, you had something that you wanted to share now? I'm going to go ahead and move on from this to the.
Yeah, so on pilot checks, payment in lieu of taxes that I've been working on for the last couple of years, Fort Leavenworth doesn't pay any property tax. They're $2.8 billion in valuation, pays zero property tax. So we're trying to lower everybody's property tax by making up for the taxes that are not being paid by Fort Leavenworth. So there's a contractor that we reached out to along with it's Hartwell Capital Consulting, works on things just like this, retaining pilot checks for local governments. So we had a phone call, Commissioner Cos and I, with them last week to discuss what's the next step in going after pilot checks from federal government. That would include the Department of Defense for Fort Leavenworth and the Federal Bureau of Prisons for the federal prisons. So it's basically like a lobbyist, a contractor to work with D.C. to talk to the right people to get this figured out. Everybody that I've talked to over the years on the federal side have said, we understand how the pilot program works. We already give pilot checks to schools. We already give it to Department of Interior facilities. We don't know why we don't do it for Department of Defense. As far as we know, nobody's just ever asked for it. So now we're asking. So we would like to reach out to the other commission to see if we have a consensus on retaining this company to engage in what they need to do to facilitate
This one
pilot
Jackson
checks.
County, Kansas is using?
Yes, Jackson County.
Right.
Fees about the same?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're on the call with Riley County, Gary County, Sedgwick County,
Yeah.
Leavenworth County.
Yeah, all the other counties that have a big stake in a pilot check, 7 or 8 counties are all on the same page. So we're all going
Power
to join in
numbers.
together. Yeah, exactly. The more numbers we get, the better chance we've got.
And I want to point out that when Commissioner Stephen and I met with the Department of Defense in Washington, and I think when the other commissioners have met, that the representatives from those organizations, they don't object to trying to figure out a way of compensating, because one of the things that we discussed in the meeting the other day was the Michaels housing situation, and then the other housing that exists at the VA that are for-profit corporations that are on the stock exchange for billions of dollars, and they're paying zero in property taxes. So those are some of the things that this group will assist with
And we're
discussing.
talking, and it's not pennies. We're talking about probably $30 million a year is what our pilot check to just Leavenworth County would look like.
That would
So,
be a mill reduction, wouldn't
yeah.
Well, I doubt if we'll ever get to that point, but That's,
No,
I
you
mean,
gotta
that's
start.
just what the valuations of the property is. But it's just to let people know that we are trying to figure out ways of.
What's the cost to hire them? I'm all for this, but I just want to know.
So they're still going over the numbers, but this is the budget season, so that's why I'm bringing it up. They're from past jobs that they've done, about $36,000 is what Leavenworth County would look at a year.
Okay.
You could pay that the first year and then see what kind of results you're getting, and then if it's not doing anything,
it's a year-to-year contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not-
Oh, I
But
support
like I
that.
say, a lot of times you got to spend money to make money,
Yeah.
and you weigh out the odds: 36,000
Oh, I'm-
versus $30 million a year.
Commissioner,
every
I
year.
totally agree. We should have been doing this a long time ago. I'm glad you folks have taken the lead on this.
So that's what we're looking at.
Good.
Anything else on the administrative business?
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Stephen, do you have anything in admin business?
I just you covered a lot of it, but I just made some notes last night. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just made some notes about all the social media prognostication that's been going on, and just a couple points that haven't been made. Number one, the county did not lobby against disabled veteran legislation. We asked questions and we agreed with funding through the homestead process. We've been accused of lobbying against that legislation. We never did. And that is just not accurate information, and it's being put out on social media. And I don't think it's right when people put things out that aren't accurate. And I think, I wish we had a process to correct it, but I mean, it's our newspaper that could correct it, but we never lobbied against that. The other thing you already covered was the 14.85. That's the original assessed valuation. That doesn't necessarily have any connection to what the tax rate will be, and you covered the fact we don't control the majority of the taxes. Then I also, my third point, and you also covered that, was the state of Kansas exceeds revenue neutral every year, and that is seemingly not an issue with some of the folks that are up there in Topeka, that they're willing to call out the local governments on how much they spend and how that they're not going revenue neutral, but they're not doing it themselves. So the fourth point was Senator Tyson was already preparing to have a hearing on the disabled veterans legislation, and she was not bullied into having a hearing by any certain person or any group of people. She had already had that planned. And when they called the county administrator a liar, I think the county administrator has taken a fact-based approach and used evidence from the VA and the census to come to the conclusion that about $2 million in revenue would be lost by Leavenworth County and up to $8 million lost by other local governments in Leavenworth County if the representative's original legislation had been passed. And there is an alternative funding mechanism like the Homestead Act. That's all we've suggested is just fund it. If you want to pass the benefit, just fund it. And when we call the county administrator a liar, it's very disappointing, very difficult to do business with government when parties will not sit down and work together. We've invited gentlemen to sit down and face us face to face and talk about the numbers and talk about the differences. But he won't talk to us, but he will go on social media and attack, and I just think it's too bad. And we've had this social media problem is just really a problem. We had another representative state that we spent $11 million on fishing. And we had another representative state that there's no smoke and no fire, and it's not unbearable out in Easton. And I just think the problem with social media is that you put something out there and there's no way to refute it. And we're just having a problem with that. And I don't know if this is the forum to address it or not, but I just think people need to be careful don't just repeat things on social media if you're not sure. That's the only thing I've been thinking of recently is because of all this social media has been so much inaccurate information.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I had.
All right. Well, if we don't have anything else in administrative business, we'll We'll move on to the consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to have the check register removed.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda minus the check registration.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Madam
Motion
Chair,
carries.
I move that we accept the check register section of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I'll begin voting with, is there any discussion? I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
Abstain.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Okay, formal board action. We need to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-14 pursuant to KSA 8-2002, KSA 8-1560, and KSA 19-101, declaring a reasonable maximum speed limit on non-hard surface roads and establishing signage posting procedures on roads under jurisdiction and control of Leavenworth County, Kansas, repealing Resolution 1998-26 and all other prior resolutions regarding maximum speed limit on non-hard road county roads, surface county roads. So that is what we need to have a motion for in discussion. Is there anything that we want to talk about before we, Commissioners, or before we begin
This is on the agenda. Last week it was discussed, and it's on the agenda this week at your direction. Legal staff has reviewed what our options are and prepared this resolution.
I asked for a briefing report on the cost of this.
I think that we do have an estimated cost for it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Commissioners, to add to your consideration, so it is approximately between the sign crew and the sign itself, the physical materials and everything, it's approximately $150 to $175 per sign to make the sign, place the sign, and then move the sign. And then we would need to post every entry point of the roadway, and so generally you would have at least 4 signs per mile of roadway, but in some cases you might have as many as 6 to 12, depending on how many bisecting roadways there are in the TCD manual. So depending upon the situation, the cost can vary, but on a per sign basis, look at that. Just the employee wages, materials, and the time, it's about $150 to $175 per sign, so multiply that out by a minimum of 4 per mile.
But still, on the manual for unified traffic control devices, would recommend a traffic study on setting the speed limit.
Yes, so the MUTCD differs slightly from the state statute in that the state statutes allow for the placement of speed limits upon roadways. The MUTCD, it states that you should do a traffic engineering study, and generally as a minimum standard for a traffic engineering study, you look at the 85th percentile speed as the minimum threshold of what is considered a study. After that, you can look at other factors depending upon the situation, including line of sight, topography, and crash data in order to determine appropriate speed limits. But as a minimum, you generally use the 85th percentile speed study in accordance with the MUTCD manual and federal guidelines.
So we could raise the speed
Right, I was
limit.
going to ask that. So that could result in an increase in the speed?
Yes, that is accurate. So there is information that KDOT's put out there that posting a road at a speed limit that is less than what is considered reasonable by the average driving public can create an increase in accidents. That language is on KDOT's posting speed limits brochure. It's out on the internet. There's PDF of that available. But yes, so in the instance, we did the traffic counts that had speed data on George Road. We did the 85th percentile calculation for those. That road would have been posted at 30 miles an hour at the 85th percentile based upon the traffic and the speed of that road. So in the event that we go to another location, we could run an 85th percentile speed, and the speed limit on a gravel road could be 40 miles an hour, it could be 45 miles an hour, it could be 30 or 25. It just depends on the location. But yes, you could increase speed limits based upon the 85th percentile speed. It would be very normal to see a 40 mile an hour.
I have another question, just out of
Mr.
curiosity.
Stephen.
Go ahead.
This is a very straightforward, simple resolution. The reason for this is when there is a event of a project going on that impacts nearby roads, this allows for the county government to have a rapid response, to be able to lower the speed if necessary, and it's just it's the same thing that other entities do when they're doing road work, to be able to respond to that, and it's certainly allowed by statute, and I think we should do this without delay.
Do you have a question?
I just one of the questions that I did have, I'm just curious that in these signs that we're talking about on if we were going to change, there's also and does this account for curves that might not be adjusting for?
That's only if you do a traffic study.
Yeah,
Well, I'm just meant in this.
So that would be like a secondary traffic study. So like 85th percentile being your minimum traffic study threshold, and then if you wanted to look at other criteria, you could look at topography and the alignment, vertical and horizontal alignment of the road, basically, and line of sight of existing entrances and other roadways.
So this resolution does not take that into account at all?
This resolution is
just strictly for.
This is it allows discretion of the Public Works Department under Part 4 in the event of a hard surface roadways are closed. Surrounding gravel roads would be posted at 25 miles an hour, and so that would place the discretion on the Public Works Department to determine that those locations and when that would be appropriate.
Based on what criteria?
Do what?
Based on what criteria?
Based on an extended length of time and a significant increase in traffic, both of which are open for interpretation of what is extended length of time and interpretation. I have what I would consider an extended length of time of at least 30 days, and a significant increase in traffic is kind of an arbitrary definition, because some roads have a significant amount of traffic on them already, so an increase in 50 vehicles a day on a road that's already getting 400 in this gravel is not the same as a road that's getting 50 vehicles a day currently. It has an increase of 300 or 1,000, even 2,000 in this case. And so that would all be something that would have to be a case-by-case interpretation of this policy by the Public Works Department.
So this resolution would be asking Public Works to go against the manual on uniform traffic control devices.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Stevens. That's coaching it in the wrong direction, because the statute allows for it. So though it goes against that particular roadway procedure, it doesn't. It's not something that's not contemplated by the state law, which is allowed for it in statute.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Stephen, but just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
So I have a question.
I understand what you're saying as well, Commissioner Cause, but we've already waited too long for this. We've allowed this situation to go on, and it's been creating dangerous traffic situations. And this addresses it, and we followed the procedures that you requested.
Didn't
Commissioner Culberson?
Ryan at KDOT say they're putting in a temporary bypass road?
So yes, coming up on the project on K16, there will be a bypass road that is completed. I think I'm assuming we're probably 4 weeks out from that completion at this point. We're about 3 weeks into the project, I believe, and it was 6 weeks. There were 6 weeks that was going to go by, and then those folks accessing the lake and Helen Hilltop would be able to access it from a bypass road that would go south. And so that would decrease some of that detour traffic on the west side of K-16. Those folks right now who live west of the project cannot get south. A lot of them do work in Kansas City, so they would be taking some routes out through the gravel roads, maybe down to Sandusky. So here in a few weeks, there will be a bypass road, from my understanding of the phasing of the project, that will allow traffic to access K-16 south of the intersection.
Well, all I'll say, in my 40-plus years with Leavenworth County, we have never went against the manual on uniform traffic control devices, ever, on anything.
And I understand the traffic was horrendous the first couple days, but talking to deputies just yesterday, the traffic has drastically dropped off. So I don't like passing legislation long term on something that's a short term problem.
Well,
Smith, did you have something?
Yeah.
Just a minute, Commissioner Stephen. Commissioner Stephen, can you wait just a minute, please? Commissioner Smith Mike Smith had already begun to speak.
I see this on two issues. I understand about going against the traffic thing, but I also read that in detail and says we're permitted. I think we've had people reach out to us that just want some kind of temporary, and the key word here is temporary, solution to get this taken care of. But it also gives the Public Works Division the opportunity, and we're going to face more of these, the opportunity to have this in place to use it in case he needs it.
Okay, Commissioner Stephen, go ahead.
I apologize for that. I couldn't hear.
Well, I understand.
I think that it is very disappointing to me and to my constituents. A lot of my constituents are contacting me about the fact that we're getting into farming season. There's going to be equipment out on the road. There's traffic on the roads that normally there is at this time of year that is normally not there because of the reroute. We just need the traffic to be on a temporary basis slowed down, and that's why folks are reaching out to me and wanting this temporary measure. It's only a temporary measure. It's not, and really this is a good policy because as we have these things come up in the future, Public Works is going to be able to take a measurement on the roads, and if a dramatic traffic increase happens, then they will have the ability to quickly respond in the future instead of going on for weeks here, where in my opinion, we have created a situation where we've had less than ideal traffic conditions on some of these roads and speeds still too high. So it's just a temporary measure, but it allows the government to react quickly.
I'd like to have one more question. That's from legal. Mr. Van Paries, is it easier to defend the county in a case if you follow the MUTCD manual or you don't?
Well, Commissioner Smith, in response, the state of Kansas has statutorily adopted the MUTCD manual on uniform traffic control devices as an official standard, which creates a duty of care on the part of the county to follow that. That having been said, state statutes also additionally reference the ability to set speed limits in a manner that deviates from the MUTCD. So quite frankly, there's a little bit of a gray area. I will speak from experience. Following the MUTCD provides the county and the taxpayers of Leavenworth County substantial protection from claims of negligence.
Madam Chair, if I could, we've beat this death. I'd like to go ahead and just get this out there. And I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-14 pursuant to KSA 8-2002, KSA 8-1560, and KSA 19101, declaring a reasonable maximum speed limit on non-hard surfaces and establishing signage posting procedures on roads under jurisdiction and control of Leavenworth County. Kansas, repealing Resolution 1998-26 and all prior resolutions regarding maximum speed limit on non-hard service county roads.
A motion, do I have a second?
As Commissioner Stephen, I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Beat it to death.
No. It looks like, Jeff, did you have something else you want to say? Okay, I guess we begin voting with myself. I vote no.
I vote no.
Commissioner Culbertson? Oh, Commissioner Stephen, I'm sorry.
I vote yes.
No.
And I vote yes.
Motion fails 3-2. All right.
So I did not hear the result of that. What was the result?
The motion failed 3-2.
Okay, I will just say I'm very disappointed, fellow commissioners. This is a road safety issue, and I'm very disappointed in that vote.
I'm disappointed in you not
Okay,
wanting to
that's-
listen to my 40 years of experience with roads.
Okay, well, we've covered this, so we're going to move on to next formal action is the vacation of dedicated but unopened road right-of-way. And before we open the public hearing, is there a discussion item that we can have a description of this before we begin?
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, I'd like to offer to you that were you to approve this vacation, you'd never have to worry about the speed limit on this section of roadway because it would be vacated. If I could, Leavenworth County is one of the older counties in the state of Kansas, and we have numerous instances where roads were dedicated long ago, in this instant case 1869, and the roadway no longer exists, has not existed for decades, and from time to time we discover these when property owners wish to use their property, and we determine that there is a dedicated public road right-of-way that affects their setback issues. I've seen instances where the road went through the middle of a house, and we try to clean these up to basically prevent issues from arising in the future. That having been said, I'd stand by the briefing report that's been presented to you. I believe as the map shows, the dedicated right-of-way sought to be vacated is of a roadway that does not exist in the current date, has not existed for quite some time, and would basically clean up the road record for these property owners.
That's where my house sits. I had to do the same thing because I had a road that was going to run right through the middle of my house.
In this particular section, there was a old railroad bed that went next to the highway that we're looking at vacating, and they decided after the railroad abandoned, it was a better road bed to use for the highway than this road bed. So that's how this got switched over to where the road currently is today. They just never vacated the old road.
I had to initiate it. County didn't do it for me. I had to hire one of them expensive surveyors.
Well,
Anyways, but I don't see any problem, but we got to open a public hearing.
we need to open up a public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing for the vacation of the unopened road right-of-way. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor or against this? Oh, sir, yes.
I apologize for my hearing.
Okay, sir, please come to the microphone. And can I get your name? So
I just wanted to check. Mr. Perry said here, are you working on 68102B, KSA 68102B right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know. My hearing's just not working.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. We would have given you an aid.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other comments, I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to consider a motion to vacate a used section of State Road commonly known as Leavenworth Lawrence Road pursuant KSA 68-102 and find that the road right-of-way shown on the documents presented no longer serves as a public utility due to the relocation of the public roadway, non-use and lack of any foreseeable use as a public roadway and should be vacated. Further, that all notice required by KSA 68102-A has been provided.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by the commission?
The only thing that I always look at when we vacate a road is to make sure it's not landlocking any individuals, and this is
Yes, it
not
does
do
not.
that.
Okay, then I will begin the vote with myself. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. It is closed. All right. Now we need to consider a motion to approve Sands construction for the Cushing Building parking lot, construction and improvements. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you?
Good.
Today you have a motion before you to approve Sands construction for the Cushing parking lot that is funded by $525,000 of KDOT AIC grant. First of all, we put that item out for bid after your approval in September of 2022. We had 13 companies pull the plans. We had 4 companies show up to a non-mandatory bid process, and I only received 2 bids, which is slightly disheartening for me.
It is.
But in essence of trying to move forward with the grant and not lose that money, I am recommending we approve the lowest bidder of that.
And it is a local contractor.
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yep.
Okay, well, is there
Ready
any
for a motion?
questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept Sands construction for the Cushing Building parking lot construction and improvements.
Second.
Motion second. I'll begin voting. Or is there any other discussion? Oh, okay. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Yocum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Then we need to consider a motion to approve a road improvement agreement setting out necessary improvements and maintenance for all proposed haul roads. Excuse me.
Same thing.
Is there anyone that wants to give us a little bit of a? Okay.
Commissioners, this is the second time we brought this before you. We had a work session, multiple discussions on this. I think we've gotten a pretty clean draft for you to consider that addresses anyone who comes in and applies for an SUP that has traffic significant enough to require a traffic study and any improvements to a proposed haul route. The work that probably took us the longest was trying to implement some kind of a clawback clause, and I think we're able to accomplish that.
This is Commissioner Stevens.
Yes. Go ahead.
I just received this on Friday in the email. I'd really like to have a couple more weeks at least a week to look at this, and I haven't had time to review this close enough.
I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. Would
you like a motion to
Mr.
table?
Van Paris?
It doesn't hurt anything.
Mike, you want to make a motion to table it?
What is
Yeah,
that,
can we
Mr.
table this for 2 weeks and then come back and revisit it?
I'll do that. Madam Chair, I move that we table the road improvement agreement for 2 weeks.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, or was there anything that Mr. Van Paris was going to? No?
Nothing.
Just
Just-
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll begin voting. Myself, aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. All right. Now we're going to, should we go ahead and move down to additional public comment?
Yeah, let's
instead
get
of
that out of the way.
Let's go ahead and do additional public comment before we do our presentation and discussion items.
Thank you for doing that. Joe Herring,
You're
Herring
welcome.
Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Yeah, I did not wish to wait until the end of the
I didn't
executive
think you
session
might.
and all the good stuff.
Don't understand.
This is to talk about the work session that the county had May, I think it was 31st. It was on development process and everything, and I appreciate having those work sessions. I really wish that the public had more involvement in them, because there's times where it just seems a little one-sided in what's getting presented. The main thing that came out of it was the enforcement of regulations as they're written currently, and that was block lengths. You have 750 feet, then you need a connecting road, another 750 feet. Block lengths were never really discussed in my 30 years of coming up here because it just didn't have blocks in the county. We discussed cul-de-sac links, connecting roads. Those were waived during the Rock Ridge development. We took the cul-de-sac links out, did not enforce connecting roads because developers didn't want to have connecting roads in their development at that time. And I've had several conversations with staff over there on this, and we've been back and forth and discussing our differences in it. During that time, Garden Villas was presented as an example in a slideshow. 2 cul-de-sacs, 2,300 feet long. Not ideal. I mean, we understand that, but at the time it was like, county's direction was, let's get the most houses. We even have accessory dwelling units as we can on projects, keep it efficient and everything. So 4,600 foot of roads. We enforce the block length, which staff is doing as they should, because that's the regulation and the direction they received. But that could add potentially up to 2,000 foot of additional linear foot of road to be designed and built. Now that's on the developer, and I know that's not a consideration of the county cost-wise for them, but that does create 2,000 foot of more road for maintenance and upkeep on staff and public works. And I don't know if that was the true direction of what the board intended for this to do or not. During that discussion, I think it was Commissioner Stevens says, well, maybe it appears that it would be beneficial here, but not in this area, like in a lower developed area. And I think it was Commissioner Cost said we don't have a mechanism to differentiate, and we actually do. Type A or Class A subdivision, Class C subdivision. I don't know the direct what qualifies each way, and I'm sure staff can answer that, but I think we do have a mechanism that we could have it enforced in some areas. In some areas, it just doesn't make sense. During my discussions with staff, I was also informed, because I had several projects that I was concerned about this could affect, that it won't affect any project in the works, that have been in the works. I obviously perceive in the works differently than what staff does, because it affects everyone I have. The county, and you're going to have to ask them to make sure I've got this correct, it's not an official submittal until it makes an agenda, is the way the county perceives it. I perceive it at the time when we go to a pre-app meeting, present a project, present a layout, get approval, because at that time, clients go and spend a significant investment on this property. Upwards, several have been upwards of $500,000 and more. And then we submit an application. Well, this application comes in with drawing, the application, all the other documents, payment is made, and in most times, that payment is accepted in cash if it's in form of a check. And as a business owner, that's when you have a contract. If money exchanged hands and documents have exchanged, then your contract is there and you're moving forward. And this right then, in my mind, stops any regulation change or interpretation change. Should not affect those projects moving forward. But that's not how it's being perceived, because the county perceives it until you get an accepted application to an agenda that you're open to changes that entire way. And that's really the biggest discrepancy I've seen in this, and I'm not sure that's what the board intended for that to happen. But on that project alone, the one that was discussed, Garden Villas, if you add 2,000 foot of road, let's just say 200 foot of a linear foot, that's a $400,000 increase. Again, not the county's consideration, but it is 2,000 foot of linear road that the county will have to maintain. And we're not going to gain one additional house from any layout that comes in. You will have the same number or less to draw your tax base from. So in essence, it will cost county taxpayers money. To have more discussion on these items, I think would be greatly appreciated. And I know by me, to invite the development side into it, and there's always a way to figure it out and to have a better process and a process that everybody's used to and we know what's going to happen. And a comment was made during it, one last comment, that you give somebody a developer a chance to save some money, and they'll take it. And you're absolutely right, they will take it, but so would we. Every person I know would take that chance. So it's not just developers. Give us a chance to save money, we're going to do it, but we want to keep it safe and keep it good for the county. So appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we go into executive session, I just want to make clear that if I have to, I may have to leave before the end of the meeting because I have another duty to fulfill at 10:30 that I will have to leave by, so someone else will have to finish
I'll
and
do it
close
for
the
you.
meeting.
So you want to go ahead and go to the executive session, then we'll have a discussion?
Yes, that's
All
fine.
right. Madam Chair, I move that the board recess.
Commissioner
Mr. Cog?
Yes.
Could I did want to put something out. I don't know if I should ask the staff or not, but we currently have 35-mile-an-hour signage out on the road near the work project on K-16. What do we need to do to have Public Works put additional signage reflecting that speed limit at the intersection? Do we have to have a motion of the commission?
I don't think that, I think that's something that we can talk with Mr. Lothry about and have, I don't think there's probably that big of an issue with having a couple of additional signs. So I think that we can get
Well,
that taken care of.
according to the legal opinion I got from Ms. Brown, we had to have some kind of action by the commission or
Well, it's
consensus
not on the agenda.
of some kind to get. If we have 35-mile-an-hour signage, people just like to have additional signage put up at the current speed limit if we can't get the speed limit lower.
You got to follow the manual.
Okay. Well,
Staff will deal with it.
we'll have staff take care of that. How's that? Is there a consensus of the board to have? There's a
Is staff allowed to put those signs up? Or do we
Yes.
have to-
Follow the manual.
We have a consensus of the board to go ahead and try to
Follow the manual.
follow the regulations that we need to follow in order to make sure that there's compliance.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
So
Chair,
it's all right to put additional signage at the current speed limit by staff.
We
Well,
will
I'm saying
follow
that.
what the MUTCD recommends for signage placement along those roads. Yes, we'll have somebody go out and make sure that they are in compliance.
We'll make sure that everything is in compliance.
For it to be enforced, it needs to be at every intersection, correct?
no.
No, only where it's already been posted, we can go in and review.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of potential litigation involving the legal interest of the county as justified by KSA 754319B2 for the consultation with legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume meeting at 10:25 in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioners Culverson, Cos, Mike Smith, Doug Smith, Mike Stevens by phone, Senior County Counselor, and Dave Van Perry's, and County Administrator Mark Lawfrey, and anyone else that may be called by the board.
Second.
Motion and second. I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are in executive session.
Let the record show the board has returned to regular session at 10:25. No action was taken. No decisions were made. The subject was limited to the legal interest of the county.
Let me go ahead with that, Madam.
Yes, we have a motion.
Okay. I move that the staff be directed to initiate the remediation of the road surface of the Eagle Crossing subdivision and the vegetative cover required by law on the 158th and County Road 2 project and seek recovery of the cost from the responsible parties.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further comments, discussion? Then we will begin voting with myself. Aye.
No.
Commissioner Stephen?
I'm going to pass.
What do you think?
Commissioner Culverson? You pass?
Does that mean no or abstain?
Means he's referring, he can vote later if he wants to.
Oh, that's what I was trying to figure out. No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Commissioner Stephen?
I'm just going to abstain on this one. I haven't had enough time to study it.
That's a
Okay.
tie.
That's a tie.
Oh, my
So that's
goodness.
a no. So I guess we're doing
So we
nothing?
will not proceed with recovering funds to fix the road in Eagle Crossing or the
Hey, guys, I can't hardly hear. Can you tell me how this vote came down?
The motion failed.
Can I comment now?
Please, go ahead.
Folks, we got to get this. I can understand that there's some issues with it, but we've got to hold the parties responsible for these roads. I mean, this is going to be back on the county taxpayers if we don't. We've got certain things that we've got set up to be done in a correct manner, and to let just walk away from this.
I'm backwards. Read your motion again. I've got it backwards.
Okay.
Can we
revisit the motion to revisit the motion? How do we do that?
Commissioners, the original motion failed. You can remake the motion.
Let me
Okay,
do
we'll
it.
remake the motion, please.
Yes. I move that the staff be directed to initiate the remediation of the road surface of the Eagle Crossing subdivision and the vegetative cover required by law on the 158th and County Road 2 project and seek recovery of the cost from the responsible parties.
Motion and second.
Second.
Okay. Begin
Can
voting.
I raise an issue for discussion?
Please. Quickly.
And this is for the county administrator. Can you give us the time of the essence, or what kind of a time frame we're up against? Is this necessary to be completed this week, or kind of reflect on that?
Well, Commissioners, I think the timing is important, at least on one of the projects. It's been ongoing for 2 years, and on the other one, every additional week costs additional funds. So
And we are under
I believe that we should be moving
under
forward.
time.
We are under a
Concerns.
time constraint with a demand. So, any further discussion, questions? Okay, I will begin voting. I vote yes.
I vote no, and the reason I'm voting no is I'd like to see it be at least, try to get it worked out before it would go to litigation.
Commissioner Stephen, your vote, please.
Well, I concur with what Commissioner Smith said, but I will vote yes to moving forward, but I would definitely like it to be settled, if possible, ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, is there, we have now working for the discussion items. Anybody have anything they need to share today? And I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Commissioner Smith, Mike Smith, because I have an engagement that I have to attend to as a...
Do we want to, before you run off, do we want to do the chair for next week?
And, yeah, we need to make a decision for who will chair the meeting for next week, because I will be at a conference next week, so...
I move that Commissioner Culberson do it.
Okay.
Commissioner Culberson, are you willing to do the chair for next week?
Sure.
Okay, do we need that just as a consensus, or does it need to be approved formally?
You'll need to appoint a chairperson next
Okay.
week, but Commissioner Culberson has bravely and admirably stepped up to the plate.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I must go.
We'll see you.
Chair.
Okay, Doug, we'll start with you on the...
Okay, let's see what I did. Attended the continuing construction ceremony in Bayshore, groundbreaking last Wednesday. Attended the unveiling of the plaque at the Richard Allen Culture Center Friday night, and then also attended the parade along with you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Saturday night. And let's see what I got. I got township board meeting Thursday night. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Commissioner Stephen, you have anything to report?
Might not be able to hear you. Commissioner Stephen, did you have anything?
Commissioner Mike Smith and I attended the League of Women Voters Forum, and it was really good. We interacted on quite a few issues, and then had a table at the Juneteenth, and we were in the parade at the Juneteenth, and it was a really good time.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Culberson?
As we stated earlier, Commissioner Cos and I were on a Zoom meeting with Hartwell Capital Consulting about the pilot checks with 6 other counties interested in that same thing. And then I reached out to our county administrator and EMS director about the budget line items we were talking about, with instead of a pilot check, looking for compensation for services the county does for the VA, Fort Leavenworth, the prisons, et cetera, that are property tax exempt. So we're working on getting a dollar amount that might be feasible to replace the property taxes they're not paying. So I look at making a report back to the board probably in the next week or two on that.
That's great, Jeff. Okay, just a few things. As Commissioner Smith said, we were at the Juneteenth parade Saturday. Quite a few folks there. A lot of good music, too. As Commissioner Stevens said, we were at the League of Women Voters on Saturday. Had a lot of good questions. Had a pretty good turnout. And just for, the city of Lansing has been negotiating for, well, they've been wanting to move for quite a while. And TSC is going to be moving to Town Center. Last Thursday they signed the agreement. Well, they finalized the agreement, so that should be coming soon. And not sure what's going to go in that corner, but I'm sure somebody's going to be trying to purchase that corner after they move. That's all I have. Is anybody else? Any yellow bodies? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion adjourned. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.